Welcome to southwestern Alaska. What a beautiful place. These gorgeous mountains meet the ocean, beautiful rivers, and wildlife abounds in this area. Even though they have some of the most amazingly cold and brutal winters. The bears, the moose, the caribou, the wolves, it's all here. And we're here to photograph these incredible animals, to concentrate on the Alaskan brown bear, the grizzly bear, a species that is magnificent. They're here for the salmon, and we're here to find them. So on this trip, I've brought along my Canon 1dxmk3. I've got my Canon 5D Mark IV. Lens-wise, I've got my Sigma 60-600, and I've got my Sigma 500 with a 1.4 converter. That's going to take that out to a reach of about 700. It's a really good combination to have. The extender, the 1.4 extender, you only lose one stop, and it maintains the quality very, very well on this lens. Having this reach of a 60-600 really works well with these bears, because as the bears are running towards you, you can maintain focus as well if you need to keep zooming wider and wider. That way you can get the image of the bear as it continues to roll towards you or run towards you. It's an amazing, amazing thing to photograph. So much excitement. What a great day. We're photographing a mother bear who has got two cubs. She's just on the other side of the river from me. I've got the Sigma FP on a Sigma 500 with a 1.4 converter and the MC21 adapter, which allows me to actually mount this lens onto the FP. And I'm shooting video right now. The bear is fishing and catching fish and feeding it to her babies, and it's just an absolutely amazing experience. You can view my camera settings here. The higher quality recording format of Cinema DNG does require an external storage device. So I've chosen to use the MOV format and store the files directly onto the camera. For me, it's just much easier in a situation where I'm traveling. I've chosen as low an ISO that I can get away with, ISO 100. I've also chose to use an f-stop of f10 because I'm using a very strong 500mm lens, and I'm trying to photograph or videotape this bear when it's jumping from the bank into the water. I need that extra depth of field. I am using the camera completely in the manual mode, including manual focus. Although I really need more time and experience with this camera, I did find that combining strong telephoto lenses, teleconverters, and the adapter did cause a bit of focus hunting. So I switched to manual focus only on the larger telephoto lenses. The video of this bear was created on a Sigma FP and a Sigma 500mm f4 lens. A 1.4 converter and the MC21 adapter were used to help extend that lens out to 700mm. The female brown bear has her job cut out for her. She will need to put on 3 to 9 pounds of fat per day. Feeding both herself and her cubs is a full-time job. The bear is using all of her senses to locate the fish. You can see here she's feeling and she's looking under the water for the fish, as well as she'll smell the air and pick up the scent of the fish in the water. It would take approximately 3 hours and 2 separate planes for us to travel down the coastline to reach the walrus. So, 12:30, we've actually had to land on this beach. We were on our way down to photograph the walrus, and we hit some really bad weather. It's just a total fog out. And just landed on the beach, gonna hang out here for a while, and hopefully this will clear out. You know, I've been wanting to photograph these walrus for many, many years. I'm excited about it. I've got the Sigma 60 to 600, the Sigma 500 with the teleconverter. We're all set up, man. We just gotta hope this weather clears out, and we'll get down there. We're actually only about 16 miles from the walrus. We've already flown over 85 miles to get down here in this beaver. Good landing on the beach. We're going to have some lunch, take a break, and we'll hit it again in a few minutes. So you can see here on the beach that we've come across these wolf tracks by, I would say it's probably about a 3 to 4 year old female, and I'm seeing some smaller tracks as well. She may have a youngster with her. And these tracks are actually several days old. You can see they're kind of filled in with the dirt, and they're not real compact anymore. Although in this kind of weather conditions, you know, these tracks can kind of fall apart, or they can kind of look older than they really are pretty quickly. However, I think these tracks are still a day or two old. Remember, we've got the tides moving in here as well. We're also seeing a lot of bear tracks along this beach. We just saw a very large female or sow bear with about probably a 2-year-old cub. You know, soon we were back underway, flying across the most amazing and beautiful tundra of southwestern Alaska. It wouldn't be long now, and we would locate a massive herd. Guys, we got about 2,000 to 3,000 walrus right behind me. We can photograph them. Absolutely an amazing experience. Got this beautiful male bear sleeping behind me. He's fishing. The salmon are just barely starting to run, so he's busy waiting for salmon. You can see that he's kind of a lazy fisherman. He's laying down, got his head down, resting while he's watching for salmon to swim by. He'll be up in a split second to grab something to eat. These bears live in this area between 20 to 25 years of age. I would say this is probably a middle-aged bear. Very, very healthy. This bear will almost double his weight during the salmon run. They'll just eat and eat and eat. Literally working his way up to maybe 700 to 800 pounds plus. The females, 500-600 pounds. What an incredible day we're having. As you can see, he's taking a good rest. It's been a really exciting morning. We've got 3 bears out here, kind of a really big male, probably a semi-adult, and then a youngster. And they're all trying to fish the same place, and the big male keeps pushing away the other ones. It's amazing. Just now, we actually saw the middle-aged one sneak in and get a fish, and the big male just couldn't run him off in time. So we're getting some really great shots out here. They're fishing for the sockeyes, and the fish are running only okay this morning. Yesterday afternoon they were running really good, and I have a feeling it'll pick up again later on today. We'll see what happens. Just going to sit here as long as these bears are out here and continue to get some great photographs. So we've been photographing this one bear who has been in this area behind me, and the water's relatively shallow here, so when the salmon come up, he's really got the perfect setup, and it's quite nice for us too. We're back here in these trees, and we're getting a few shots where he's actually running towards the cameras. It's very well, a really good setup. You know, these salmon, they travel thousands of miles to get back to this river. They'll be out at sea for about 4 years, and then they come back and basically find their way within meters of the very place that they were born. It is an incredible act of nature, and they provide so much food for these bears. One of the other really interesting things is as these salmon start to decay, as they die, you know, once they've actually laid their eggs, they die. The decaying salmon puts 80% of the nitrogen into the air for these trees that you see around us.
There is so much excitement and adventure in traveling to distant places and experiencing photography in the ways that only dreams are made of. However, you know, I always try to take some time to really dive into nature, notice the little things, spend some time being grateful for life. Enjoying all of life's gifts, no matter how big they are or how small they are. This is the real reason that I love being in the wild places. The rest of it is just the icing on the cake. These photographic adventures offer so much more than great photography. Spending time with myself, a beautiful river, a distant sunrise, such an opportunity for self-discovery. I always try to take a few moments in the morning before the rest of the camp is even awake and take a time to be grateful and to be thankful for this amazing opportunity.
So this has been a really cool year. The bears are so fat right now that basically they fish for a little while and then they just kind of drift off to sleep for a little bit, and then they come back and fish. It's a record year for salmon, and these bears have fattened up faster than I've ever seen bears put on weight. As a general rule, a bear can gain anywhere from 3 to upwards of 9 pounds of fat per day when they're eating these salmon. Well, the way it is right now, they're gaining at least 9 pounds. And over the last 2 weeks that we've been filming these bears, we've actually seen them go from showing their ribs to having huge bellies that they're dragging around. It's incredible. Never seen anything like it. You look into the water and the salmon are just piled up as they're swimming up the river. It is beautiful. Nature at its very, very best.
After a quick stop at the lodge for some snacks and a few memory cards, we headed upriver. There was talk of a sow bear with 3 spring cubs. They had been spotted recently eating some berries. Approximately 7 miles upriver, close to the rapids, is a beautiful meadow with wild berries. Luck was with us, and we located the bears. They gave us some amazing opportunities to get some wonderful images. This is the land of the grizzly bear, brown bear. When these bears come out of hibernation, March or April, they're hungry. They start out feeding on sedge grass and other plants. They're omnivores, really anything that they can find to eat. Come July, the salmon start pushing their way up the river, the sockeye. They've traveled over 2,000 miles to get back to these rivers, the same rivers they were born in. These bears can reach upwards of 800 pounds for a male, 600 pounds for a female. And basically, when they come out of hibernation, they're going to double their weight with all the fish that they're going to consume, as well as berries, sedge grasses, and other types of food that they can find, so that once again they can go back into hibernation and survive another cold and brutal winter in Alaska. I'd like to take a moment to thank 2 amazing people, Wayne McGee and his son Jacob McGee, the owners of ATA Lodge in Alaska. They are such magnificent folks. Here's Wayne talking about the fish in the area.
So we've come here today because we have a suspicion, although it's early in the season, that there could be some king salmon sitting right here in this pool, in this seam and the lower pool below me. But we call this a char hole because this is where we come at many different times in the season and can pretty much guarantee that people will catch an Arctic char, which is one of our resident species. And while doing so, you could put on a dry fly and fish it through some of the deeper pools and maybe catch an Arctic grayling. And there's always a chance of catching a rainbow trout, of the leopard rainbow trout variety that makes this river famous. Right now we're in a transitional week. It's early July, and the trout fishing has been on fire, with a lot of trout in excess of 2 foot being caught, 24-inch plus. But right now the sockeye salmon have been coming in from the sea, And the last few days, it's just been ridiculous, the number of fish that come streaming past. And so as they move up the margins of the river and through the pools, they're displacing the resident fish. So the fishing for trout right now is a little bit tough, but you can catch your limit of 5 sockeye and more, and do catch and release in sometimes a matter of even half hour. There's just so many sockeye moving through the river. But at this time of the year, the kings have been moving in. They've been coming up river gradually in smaller groups. There's a much smaller population of king salmon in general everywhere in Alaska. But this is one of the best rivers for fishing the king salmon, and this is a great location to target them on a fly rod. Have the opportunity of catching a 20, 25, 30, even 45 pound plus massive Chinook salmon right here. For us, the first salmon to arrive up here are the sockeye, because they come right in after the first few kings start to run, and then they come in their millions, sometimes 1.5, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes, like you say, possibly even as many as 4 million sockeye can come up this river starting in early July, sometimes even late June, and run through the month of July. The kings will then build a number, and they're kind of the second salmon that we expect to start targeting. And that fish is best on our river from the last half of July, from about the 15th of July to the end of the king season, which is July 31st. The chum salmon come in the 3rd week of July and continue to migrate, and new fish coming into the system through mid-August, and some even trickle in at the end of August. And the pinks come right on their backs about a week later, usually the 3rd or 4th week of July, all the way through August. And then the silver salmon will start early August, but build in numbers and be targeting them from about the 10th, 12th of August through the end of the month and into September.
Now the bears are primarily going for the sockeye salmon, and I know most of the fishing here is all catch and release. However, the sockeye, they basically start to decay and they all die off. So you do keep a few of the sockeye for food or consuming, and the other salmon are primarily catch and release. Is that correct?
Well, the state of Alaska will allow people to keep a certain bag limit for each species of salmon, and you can keep up to 5 sockeye a day. And when they're fresh, just coming to the river, they're the best eating fish, and a lot of people like to retain a few and take them home to enjoy once they get back to share with their family and friends. King salmon, you can only keep 1 a day, up to a limit of 5 for the season. But we encourage 100% catch and release of all king salmon, because we want them all spawning, because their numbers are not nearly the same prolific numbers that we see with all the other 4 salmon species. And then technically you could keep 3 coho a day if you wanted to, but again, we try and encourage the release. And most people don't want to be retaining chum and pink salmon because they're just not as palatable as the other 3.
Now the coho, are they good to eat?
They are. They're very good to eat.
Yeah.
Their flesh doesn't necessarily conserve as well as sockeye because it's a different consistency and a different fat content. But if they are cleaned, fresh when they've just come in and frozen and handled properly, they're a delicious eating fish.
Okay. And a lot of people probably don't realize that these salmon have different diets. Different species of salmon eat different things, which can actually affect how the salmon taste when you eat them yourself, right?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Many people have the theory that the sockeye salmon's flesh has a different consistency because of what it eats out in the ocean. When the salmon are coming into the fresh water, they've stopped eating. They've got one thing on their mind. They're trying to migrate up to their spawning grounds, and they're not actively feeding at this time. But the sockeye, when they're in the ocean, they're filter feeders, and they'll just go through the ocean, opening and closing their mouth and eating plankton. And so because they eat a different food source, they taste differently.
Now, we know that there's many different species of salmon that frequent this river, and the sockeye is the main species that attracts the bears. Is that correct?
That is correct. They're both the most numerous and the easiest to catch. So the sockeye come right along the margins or the banks of the river trying to find the course of least resistance. And because they're so numerous, the bears can stand on the shore. They find a favorite perch oftentimes, and they'll jump in and grab the sockeye as they pass by. And since there's so many of them in such shallow water conditions, it's easier for them to catch. We also have certain places where the sockeye kind of just move quickly over very, very shallow water, and you can see their backs out of the water and the water is splashing. The bears see that too, and they're chasing these sockeye across the gravels, and that can be an exciting photography opportunity that is unique to this part of the world. But the sockeye are definitely the main food source for the bears, because the other salmon tend to move up further out in the river in smaller numbers and hold in deeper water, which makes them more difficult to catch for the bears.
I've noticed, you know, in the few years I've been coming here, that I'm starting to recognize a few of these bears. They have specific scars, and you know, they're just like people. They all have different looking faces and expressions, and it also seems like they all sort of develop their own style of fishing. And it's unique to see how, you know, I don't know if it's passed down from generation to generation or how they actually learn their style of fishing. But it's, you know, some of them kind of dip into the water like submarines, and others take these huge leaps, and others run through the shallows. And so cool to photograph different bears, you know, doing their fishing the way, almost as if they were taught to do it.
Yeah, well, of course, the bears will spend a couple of years with their mother once they're born, and they'll learn a lot from their mother in terms of how to fish, where to fish. And I suspect that a certain part of it is true, but a lot of it is going to be just trial and error until they find a technique that works for them. And so some of them have found certain locations where the conditions warrant certain types of techniques to catch the fish, and others focus on other locations where for them they found it easier to catch fish.
Great. Well, I say let's go fishing and go photograph some bears.
Let's see what we can find.